ever since I was 10 years old, I haven't really had a thing for dogs, mainly because at that age I had a dog that just I loved to bits, and she got hit by a car and it just broke my heart. And so I put up this wall towards dogs, like, no, not going to do it again, just so I wouldn't get hurt. And so it was like that for about, well, until like 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, when Bella found us. Sandra and I were walking through a park, and this little dog comes up to us, and she's dirty and she's just adorable, and she's following us, and I'm like, no, get away, we don't have margin for a dog right now, because we've been traveling a lot, right? So what are we going to do with a dog? Leave it at home, take it with us? It's just not practical right now. So, but it ends up going underneath the military compound fence, and it's over there. And I looked at Sandra and I said, you know, what do they do to dogs over there? And she says, I don't know, but probably nothing any good. And so I said, okay, I'll tell you what, if I call the dog and it comes, then we'll take it home and we'll keep it until we can find it a better place to go. And she said, okay, yeah. So I end up calling this dog. She comes, okay, I pick her up, and it's just this like instant thing, you know, and she's been ours ever since. And I remember when we were going to her parents' town, and we had just come back from the donut shop or whatever, and we're walking by this person's yard, and normally this person, their gate is closed, but this time it was open. He was working on his truck in the kind of the street area, and as we're walking by his truck, his German Shepherd slips out from underneath the vehicle and just beelines straight for Bella, grabs Bella in his teeth and just rips her around like she's a rag doll. Like, it was just carnage. I blacked out. I had such an adrenaline rush that I blacked out. I didn't really know what happened until Sandra kind of told me later. She said, you put down the donuts and then you went over to the dog and you booted that thing off the ground. That's what made the German Shepherd let go. And man, I was just like, I was seeing red. I was just ready for war. I'm like, what do I do? Do I go into the yard and do I rip this dog to pieces with my teeth, or do I go and knock out the owner for letting this thing loose in the streets like that? Like, oh man. And so I just, all these thoughts, and just, it was crazy. And Bella's screaming and Sandra's crying. It's just this really big freak out moment. And but we check her out, and the German Shepherd just got her skin, just holes in the skin, that's all, nothing big. And so we said, okay, we'll let it pass. It's just an accident. And then later that day, we're talking about it with her family in the other town, and we see Bella in the corner, and she's shivering, and we're like, oh, it's so cute. She's terrified. I don't know why that'd be cute, but then she started swelling up. And over the next couple of days, her body swelled up to the point where her skin was splitting open, and you were able to see her muscle inside, and clear liquid was pouring out, and it was just this horrible thing. And the part of the house where she was in, like, we couldn't move her, it was too bad. And she was in that house, and that area started to smell like death. And it was a really traumatic thing, you know. And I just opened up my heart again to these dogs, and now I'm going to lose this dog. And during that time, I had been studying under a guy named Curry Blake, who has a story where his daughter fell from like a 2-story or 3-story window and hit the concrete face first and died. And in the whole panic, he grabs her, brings her inside, sits her on a chair, and then for the next like 40 minutes to a long time, he's pointing at her and saying, you will live and not die. You will live and not die, right? He's just not giving up. He's believing in the scriptures, and he's saying, you will live and not die. And she comes back to life, right? You gotta check him out and get that story. But she burps. She comes back to life. She asks for something to eat, and it's just really like, oh, right? Now she's part of his ministry as well. And the reason he was shouting, you shall live and not die, for such a long time, and he had to get louder and louder and louder to drown out the voices in his head. It's like, you're going to lose another one. You're going to lose another daughter, because he had lost his first daughter a couple of years earlier to cancer. And so now I'm here with Bella, and I'm thinking, well, if he can do that with his kid, maybe I can do that with my kid. My kid being a dog, right? And so every 10 minutes, I'm saying, she's coming home with me. She's coming home with me. She's coming home with me. And she got worse and worse and worse. But the more that I said this, the more I drowned out those thoughts in my head, those voices saying, you're going to lose her, you're going to lose this dog of yours. And I just said, no, she's coming home with me, she's coming home with me. Worse and worse and worse she got. Finally, I'm out of town doing a men's conference with some Canadians who came down, and Sandra calls me up, and she's crying. She says, BJ, Bella's not going to make it. And we talked, and I hung up the phone. I wasn't upset on that moment, but I looked up into the sky and I said, God, you've got to do something right now, because I'm not there to even try to raise this thing from the dead. They're going to bury her as soon as they can. So you got to do something, or else this thing is done, right? And I left it at that. Went home, ended up having a real tough time getting to sleep. I cried for the first time in a real long time, and it's like, and I know it's a dog, but it's my dog, right? And I had just opened up my heart to this thing, and I'm going to lose it. And so the night goes by. Next morning, I meet up with Sandra again, and she says that, Bella's still breathing. And she said that she was over the dog. At this point, when Sandra called me, the dog had been dead for about 2 hours. What had happened is we called a farmer who was good with animals, I guess, and she came over and gave Bella some medicine, but when she looked at the amount that she gave her the same amount that you would give a 2,000-pound bull, right? So we have a 20-pound little Dalmatian, so it overkilled, and that's what killed her. So she was dead for about 2 hours. My father-in-law, he was there. He's been around a lot of dogs. He's had a lot of dogs, seen a lot of dead dogs. He's like, this is a dead dog. And so Sandra's there, and she's crying. She says, no, God, you told me that I could go home with this dog, so I rebuke this spirit of death in the name of Jesus. He just went into this thing, right? And I guess Bella passes gas and starts breathing again, but not to the point where it's anything like convincing, right? Like they were assuming they were coming back to a dead dog in the morning. And they came back in the morning, and no, Bella's still breathing. And then the next day, Bella's still breathing and actually starting to move now. And the next day, she's actually starting to drink. And the next day, she's trying to walk around. And the next day, she's going to the washroom. And the next day, she's getting her sight back because she went blind. And it just went like this for about 4 or 5 weeks until Bella was actually back in our house with us. And she's still with us. And my father-in-law was so impacted. Like, he's not a very strong Christian believer or whatever, and he's like a street guy, a tough guy, right? And he should have seen this guy. He was going to all his like iron-eating friends saying, the dog came back from the dead, God is real. Like, it was just this really epic season for all of us. And she came home with me. Bella came home with me. And you better believe I'm bringing her to Canada. She's coming home with me. God can and does some big things. You just gotta know what He's given you and not let go until you get it.